Child sex trafficking is a form of child abuse that occurs when any child under the age of 18 years is advertised, solicited, or exploited for commercial sex, and something of value is given in exchange for sexual activity. And this something of value can be money, it can be drugs, even a place to stay, sometimes just affection. And it can be given to or received by anyone, including the child. So it could also be a caregiver, it could also be a foster care parent, it could be anyone. The international definition of sex trafficking is based on three principles: act, means, and purpose. The act is force, fraud, coercion, kidnapping, sale, or purchase. The means could be trickery, seduction, abuse also of a position of vulnerability. And the purpose is always exploitation. And then under exploitation, we have many definitions of what is exploitation. So of course we put in prostitution, organ trade, child soldiers, domestic servitude, child labor, and bonded labor. And in human trafficking and sex trafficking included, movement is not a necessity. A child or a woman or a man does not have to be taken across borders. The majority of sex trafficking actually happens inside countries. And in the book that I write about, in I Kick and I Fly, I write about sex trafficking, which can even happen on the very bed where a child is born. So there's no movement at all. But the child is harbored for exploitation very deliberately in the place they are born. And very important part of the UN Protocol to End Trafficking's definition is abuse of a position of vulnerability. Because very often you won't see someone in chains and you won't see someone locked up in a room when they are trafficked. And you will think, oh, that woman, that 19-year-old standing on a street corner with lipstick on her face and a smile has chosen to be trafficked or chosen to be standing there, so she is not trafficked. Your choice becomes irrelevant if you are vulnerable. If you're hungry and you want food, then obviously you'll think, okay, someone's going to give me food. If you want a place to stay at night, you'll do it. But that's not a real choice. It's like an absence of choice. So we say consent is irrelevant to being trafficked. Exploitation is the key part of being trafficked. Sex trafficking is one of the biggest organized crimes in our world today. According to the United Nations, it's the second largest organized crime in the world. It's crossed the drugs trade in terms of the billions of dollars it generates for the criminal networks, and it's close to the arms trade. Because a girl can be sold again and again, whereas drugs you have to consume once and it's finished. And it's become easy for the traffickers with wars and natural disasters and weak law enforcement systems to go out and prey on the most vulnerable, take advantage. And the traffickers are much more organized than us. And it consumes millions of people every year in our world. We think that we've ended slavery, which was in the 19th century. And here we have, people being used and abused in a very organized way with supply chains and destinations and sources, which the traffickers know and go out and seek. And especially now with technology, they're also using online methods of recruitment and seasoning. According to the ILO, the International Labour Organization, they are saying that at any given moment, there are more than 25 million people who are trapped as victims of sex trafficking. In the United States, the figures vary because so much of the crime is underground that we can't really go and number count and catalog all the victims. The majority of those trafficked, according to data collected by the United Nations, are female, and the majority are children. For sex trafficking in the United States, a girl who is trafficked is between the ages of 13 and 15. The other thing that I have noticed in my long life as an activist and a policymaker is that the people who are trafficked are normally the most marginalized and the most vulnerable, because traffickers find it easy to prey upon them. So in the United States, they are Black, they are from indigenous communities, they are poor, they are female because they have less choices in work and education and skills. But everywhere across the world, trafficking is really of the most disenfranchised people. And that is why women and children form the majority. Every country is a source country and a destination country for sex trafficking. So we cannot say that this country has no sex trafficking. Countries which are rich have sex trafficking, which are called the first world, and countries which are the third world have sex trafficking. And a lot of the trafficking is cross border between countries, but the majority of trafficking is inside countries. What is very interesting to me is that every year traffickers find new ways of recruitment. And now in the United States, technology has become a new way for traffickers to work very efficiently and fast and scale up. So, what they are doing is creating fake profiles. They are using chatbots to seduce kids who are isolated. They're looking for love, affection, and looking for some kind of community, and they find it online. And these chatbots, are set up by these fake profiles, recruit the kids, season them. It's called seasoning, and then they call them to a hotel room somewhere, and the kid shows up, and the kid is then raped or taped. And this has become a new method of sex trafficking in the United States, which is really very hard for us to combat. But the one good thing that's happening is that we are trying to use artificial intelligence to combat human trafficking, because AI can process huge amounts of data very quickly, which the human eye cannot. I personally want to also create more communication tools for young people, because I feel that all the tools on sex trafficking are for adults, whereas the sex traffickers actually prey upon the young. And so I wrote I Kick and I Fly because I wanted young people to know what happens to children their age. I also wanted parents and teachers to be able to talk to young people about a subject which is totally prevalent, in plain sight, but somehow invisible because we won't talk about it. So I thought, here's a fast-paced adventure story which kids can relate to and also gives answers, because my heroine Hira fights back in various different ways. She forms alliances, she finds the courage to speak up, then she discovers the power of her body through kung fu, and she sees the power of women's collective action and how a community comes together, how to overcome family relationships, an alcoholic father, a friend who's a classmate who's a bully. All these answers are there. And what Scholastic has also done is they've helped me create a discussion guide for teachers to be able to talk to kids about these issues. And I think that is the most important thing we can do as adults today, is to discuss the truth with our teenagers and do it in a hopeful way.